A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Ankita Chauhan from NASSCOM Product Council. Today is the second last episode of our product management series, and we will focus on go to market in this session. Demand and lead generation go hand in hand and focuses on driving more business to the organization. Today, I have with me Paroma Sen, who is Industry Solutions Marketing Lead in SAP India, and will share her knowledge and experience on this interesting topic of lead and demand generation. You can write your questions at any time during the session, and Paroma will try to answer most of them after her presentation. Also, please do not forget to leave your feedback to help us improve the future webinars. Over to you, Paroma.
Thank you, Ankita, for that introduction, and welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Quick word of introduction on myself. I'm Paroma Sen. I have about 13 years of experience in marketing. I've worked across multiple industries like semiconductors, hardware, audio software, e-commerce, and then now, of course, SAP for the last 2.5 years. While I've done both B2C and B2B marketing, I feel that my love for marketing really sees the light of day in a B2B context. And therefore, I thought today's session about lead generation in a B2B context would make the most sense. I'll just move a few slides down, some legal disclaimers from NASSCOM and SAPs, which you can probably go through at your own time. There's no need to. I wanted to spend time today talking about demand generation, but rather than it be a very broad-based demand generation gyan, as they call it, I thought we'd go deeper into social selling, which is now really gaining mainstay in the world. And as the world is becoming more and more digitally, leaning more towards digital channels, we see social selling as really gathering steam and becoming the next generation demand generation construct in a very strong way, right? Of course, when we talk about B2B demand generation, there are many other ways of demand generating demand for a B2B organization, for B2B solutions. There's of course a face-to-face traditional selling. There is telemarketing. There is one-on-many, one-on-few, and one-on-one kinds of engagement. There are several digital engagements, including this kind of webinars which we do with customers all the time. There can be content syndication on various paid platforms, paid advertising, and so on and so forth. Social is a very different way of selling because it requires a whole different philosophy, mindset, and a set of behaviors, which sometimes comes naturally to us and sometimes does not. So it's very useful to be aware of what those behaviors are, what is acceptable in a social context, what is not, and really how to become a good social seller. Yeah. So that's kind of what we will talk about today. A brief word of, this is kind of something that I always say that a marketeer should keep in mind. When we talk about demand generation, demand is really never generated from zero, right? It's just like energy. If you remember our high school physics, energy does not come from nothing. It can change from one form to the other. Like here you see potential energy being changed into kinetic energy. Just like that, demand does not come from nothing. It can only transform itself. So for example, when we speak to customers have a lot of pain points. And those pain points are really latent demand. So when you take those pain points and you're able to articulate a path to a solution, which may or may not involve your offerings, then that process is called demand generation. Yeah. So that's one thought I want to leave with you. And the second thought is, today in the world we are, demand generation should be empowering and low pressure. And we often see salespeople who are very aggressive and who are constantly talking about solutions. And we see a lot of customers that get turned off by that approach. So it's a lot more about adding value, adding insights, helping someone find that the solution is really helping their business context and helping them become more competitive. And that empowerment is at the crux of what social selling is and how to make the best of that particular option that's available to us. Okay. Of course, digital as a field has evolved since the 1990s. I mean, earlier I remember when I was in university in the 2000s, 2005-ish time frame, we were just beginning to see the World Wide Web really start with the advertising models, really engaging people. What is interactive advertising? What are the kinds of interaction? And since then to now, it's evolved a great deal. Without going into each of these things, I will say that the social media that we have today, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, be it LinkedIn, all of them are places where our customers have their eyeballs. So as marketing or sales people or as demand generation professionals, it is imperative that we get our message where their eyeballs are. And that's of course social selling. So what is really social selling, and how do we define it formally? So this is the formal definition. It is a new and a modern way for sales executives and their support network to help their organizations generate revenue by doing four things. It's finding, connecting, engaging, and collaborating with potential prospects online. The idea is to build a trusted relationship with the customer. So if you just reach someone as a cold message on LinkedIn, for example, and say, hey, can we have a meeting? Most likely they will ignore that message. The reason is that there is no relationship that they can bank on. They don't know who you are. They don't know what to expect from you. Therefore, they will not give you what you want. So it is important to build that relationship over time and come across as a trusted individual who will give that customer value, real value. And then they will come back and say, yeah, sure, let's meet. I would like to understand what you do. So that's the what. And by the way, the disclaimer here is that social selling techniques where we stand today in 2018, they are a complement to the existing sales strategy. It cannot be a replacement, right? Because that face-to-face interaction is very, very important to closing big deals and to even nurturing a lead forward. So remember that this is a critical part of your strategy, of your selling sales strategy, but cannot replace other mechanisms completely today. Here's some very, very interesting statistics for you to look at. I mean, all the major publications you can see down there, Harvard Business Review, IDC, and so on and so forth, who say that there are now in a large B2B buying decision, there are over 5.5 people involved in that purchase decision, which may include the CIO, the CFO, the CEO in some cases, maybe the line of business head, maybe certain other people in their team. Right? Most B2B buyers, 3 out of 4, 75%, now use social media to research vendors because the power of word of mouth is that strong. It is exactly that strong, and they want to use their network and their trusted relationships to understand whether to invest in a vendor or not. We already know most people do not respond to cold outreach. Even on a tele call, people, I mean, how many of you, I'm sure all of you, hang up their phone when reached by a cold caller from one of those many marketing agencies, right? And 57% of a buying journey is done before a sales rep is even involved. So it's very important that we understand that customer behavior is changing very quickly, very dynamically. That is influencing our business environment. That's influencing the way people buy, and therefore it must influence the way we sell. If we are to remain competitive, if we are to continue to sell and sell well, building advocates and people that support us post-sales, then it must, then we must take into account how to do it and how to do it well. Again, this is something that I touched upon. The essence of social selling is really building oneself up as a trustworthy individual who is giving a customer value, who is insightful and helpful. We'll go through all of this, what it really means and how to do this. We are currently covering what is it that needs to be done, and we'll go through how to do it in a few minutes. Yeah? On the right side, you'll see what not to do. We do not want to come across as cold on a digital selling platform. We do not want to come across as digitally inactive, who only logs in once a month and maybe reposts something on LinkedIn. And we do not want to come across as selling. That's just pure play product sales, only talking about solutions, only talking about, we want to talk about what are the challenges that our customers facing, what are their pain points, that we really understand what What is it that they're going to go through or going through before we start pitching in solutions? It's important to ensure we don't come across as self-centered, therefore. Right? This is a quote that I thought was very apt over here. The modern consumer is digitally driven, we know that. They are socially connected, they are mobile empowered. Therefore, sales reps need to adapt or be replaced. It is very easy today for a salesperson to be replaced, and there are many hungry people out there who are willing and able to do a great job. So in order for entire organizations to be modern and delivering value to a modern consumer, the sales teams also need to be empowered, therefore. And in terms of achieving their KPIs, yes, 78% of salespeople using these channels, the social selling and social media techniques, they do outsell their peers. So this is proven by Forbes research. Okay, so now in the next, this was the introduction of what is social selling and why it is important. Going forward, we are now going to go through what is it, what are the steps that you do, or how do you become a social seller really? So there are 3 modules here that I will cover. One is social branding, right? Social branding is how do you, every person, of course, taking a step back, every person has one domain of expertise. Now, for me, I would say marketing is my area of expertise. Now, does my social brand come across and tell people that I'm an expert in the functional domain of marketing? And if it does not, then what are the things I can do to fix it? So that whole piece is social branding, which is about yourself and about creating that right brand so that people can see it and recognize the value that you have to offer. The second piece is social listening and prospecting, which listening means is just the way we hear through our human ears. Listening means paying attention to the market, what's going on, what is at the top of mind for the customers or for that segment of market that you're interested in. Listening to that, of course, this is digital listening, so we'll talk about the tools and how that happens. Prospecting is finding the right people. So finding the right people and figuring out what is important for them is that whole listening and prospecting piece. The third piece is social sharing and engaging. Sharing and engaging is important to build a relationship. A relationship is not transactional. It's not just reaching out and say, hey, I need a favor from you, but it's being able to give something periodically over time, build up that value-added relationship, so that later when you need that person, you have some equity from which to place that request, right? Again, it's very intuitive because it's very similar to what we go through at a human relationship level. But again, it is important to recognize those things so that we can act in the right manner on our digital platforms, right? So we'll jump straight into the branding piece first, yeah? Okay, social branding. Sorry. I'm not sure how much of this audience is from a marketing background. So as, I mean, of course, branding is a whole field of study in itself. What I'll just say is that a brand really, excuse me, at the end of the day, it's a promise that you make to your customers. So for example, the brand promise of an Apple might be that it is very easy to use and intuitive or cutting edge, high tech. A brand promise of a certain car, a Volvo, would be safety first, right? So a brand stands for something in people's mind, and that what it stands for is the promise that you make customers and that promise that we have to deliver day on day, every day. If you fall below the promise, then your customers will notice and they'll stand up and protest, and your brand value will therefore come down, right? So with that contour of context, a brand is a promise, we will start looking at social branding, which is what is the brand that we each individual stands for. So I might say that my brand, I'm an honest individual. I have certain values that I stand for very strongly, and I'm a functional expert in marketing. That's my brand value. So how do I communicate that from a social standpoint? So here I'm going to show you 3 examples. Okay, 3 examples of what, and again, LinkedIn being the professional network that it is, all my 3 examples are on LinkedIn. Some of them are examples of what not to do. Some of them are examples of what to do. right? So for example, if you look at this particular profile of this person, there are some very glaring issues with this profile, right? So if I was the customer of this person, I would visiting this person's profile to see what value can you add to me, Mr. Marek. I would wonder, why is there no last name there? This picture is not particularly a very professional picture. It's somewhere in the mountains. I'm not sure what's going on there. His subtitle says "Time for Change, Time for Business." That's also confusing because it's a nice philosophical statement, but it doesn't really tell me what this person does. The summary section, okay, he's written some things that are quite nice, but towards the end, there's a lots of acronyms there, and I have no clue what that means. On top of that, he only has 48 connections. So ultimately, this whole profile leaves me very confused, especially if I was a customer. And I would not necessarily respond if this person asked me for a meeting or a call or even wanted to give me something. I possibly would not respond because it's very confusing. I cannot understand what this brand is standing for. So story A is like, okay, I'm clueless, so please don't do that. Yeah, don't do this. Don't make these mistakes. This is the second example. Now, here it looks much better. The picture is professional, full name. His subtitle says what he does. He has 500 plus connections, which is a kind of healthy number. By the way, when we talk about number of connections, while it's a thumb rule that these days the number of connections ideally should be above 500, but that only makes sense when they're quality contacts and you're not just adding everybody, whoever sends you a request. In India, this happens a lot, by the way. There are lots of random connection requests that come from people you've never seen, never heard from before. So when we say 500 is a good number to appear, that refers to 500 quality contacts. Yeah, that's really clear. So going forward here, his summary is good. He's written a whole list of things that he's done. So overall, this is a good story, a good brand, a good examples. However, keep in mind that this is clearly an example of someone who is a job seeker. And how do we know that? We know that because of the way he's written his summary. Right? So this is not a profile of someone who is necessarily oriented towards building customer success. He is looking for a new job. And the way I'll illustrate it best is by showing you the next example, which is much more of a customer-focused individual, right? So, so this woman, Lisa, if you look at her profile, it's got these 4 distinct pieces, right? Professional picture, yes, that's all good, 500 plus connection. This is hygiene. Her subtitle says exactly what value she is adding, who she represents, which the company she represents. Her summary is broken up into 4 very clear pieces. What is her role? What is the company that she belongs to? What do they do? And what are her passions? And then in the end, a call to action where she says, feel free to connect with me on XYZ platforms. She also has a lot of rich text in her profile. So these pictures that you see at the bottom, they really help to break down the visual monotony of too much text by focusing on some visual, like they could be videos, they could be white papers, it could be other kinds of rich content. So this is a very nicely put together profile that enables me to understand exactly the value she delivers. This is not a person looking for a job. This is a person looking to add value to the customers who come to her profile looking for an answer to a question. It's as simple as that. So this is the one that we recommend the most from a, if you're looking for a B2B demand generation, social selling approach. Yeah. All right. So again, this is a quick checklist for a complete social branding profile. For the sake of hygiene, it's important for your profile to be complete. That's the basic minimum. And then all the things that you do, like we saw the examples before, add to making a much more rounded out profile. And then people come to you looking for that value that you provide. So of course, professional photo, we talked about a value-driven headline, where you're located, what industry you work for. It is possible to get a custom URL on LinkedIn. I won't go into the details of that. It's pretty easy to do. but it helps in discoverability. People can find you a lot more easily. Your summary section is very important because a lot of times people will only look at that. They may not have time to go through everything else. Your experience, education, the endorsements that you have, recommendations are great because they are much more of a qualitative. So while endorsements are more of a numerical count, recommendations are qualitative evaluation of your work done in the past. So that's why it usually is a lot more value added. The groups that you belong to tell people what you're interested in. We talked about the rich media, multimedia, your awards, publications, volunteer experience, who you're following, what kind of activity you're doing on a daily basis, because that tells people how digitally active you are or are not, and then number of connections and so forth. Okay. So like the pundits in this field like to say, LinkedIn is no longer just an online resume. Yes, it was that way maybe 15 years back. Today, it is your digital reputation. So it's very important, just like we get up in the morning, brush our teeth, wash our faces, it's important to keep our LinkedIn profiles as clean, as up-to-date as possible, because that's what represents you in the rest of the world. Beyond your friends, family, and your immediate network, LinkedIn is your face to the world. So it's important to keep it clean and keep it, maintain it correctly. Okay. All right, so moving on to the next piece, which is social listening and prospecting. As we discussed earlier, listening is paying attention to what's going on in the market that you're interested in, and prospecting is finding the right people that you would reach out to, building up leads. We are still talking about selling, right? We're talking about selling and using digital and social techniques to sell. And prospecting is, of course, the first step really when it comes to the sales process. So let's get into it. This is a real example of the power of a network, really. So this lady, Agita Saraswati, is a colleague of ours from Indonesia, and she was an intern when she joined SAP. Within 3 months, she was tasked to put together an event for SAP in Jakarta, Indonesia, which would have 300 CFOs. Now, being an intern, she obviously did not have a very strong CFO network, and the database she was given was also not giving any good results. So what she did was she started building her network through LinkedIn, and ultimately, after 2 to 3 months of a lot of work, she was able to pull together this event, and 80% of the final attendees turned out to be from the network that Agita had built. So it was a very strong event, great event, pulled off by this person who was a newbie in the company, and really shows the power of the network and of social media, specifically LinkedIn. So, so why do social listening at all? Social listening is important because it helps us, of course, understand our customers, understand what's top of mind, what's keeping them awake, what are their pain points, what's bothering them. Monitor competition. Of course, competition is also very, very strong. For us, our competitors are just as strong as we are on LinkedIn and other digital channels. So it's important for us to monitor what they do and how they do it. Identify influencers. In every field, there's always a bunch of people who identify themselves as thought leaders, who are the best and brightest in that field and who are knowledgeable, who are experts. So it's important for us to identify them and engage them, because their words are important to the rest of the industry. So we want to be able to identify and influence the influencers, if you will, if you want to call it like that. Right? Monitor feedback. So every time you release a product or you've done something new or you've put across a story to the world, you want to see how people are reacting to it. So digital gives a very good real-time almost feedback for people to monitor. And then finally, understand customers, right? Therefore, social listening is important. It helps us to get ahead on these 5 pillars. How would one go about social listening? So, of course, it's important to understand who you're going after. If it's a demand generation context, Which industry, which customers are we looking for? What segment of the market are we looking for? What geography are we looking for? It's important to identify this set of people. Who are they? And then create a list of keywords that give you the information you're looking for. What are the terms relevant to their industry? What are the triggers? What are the pain points? What challenges are their companies going through? Are they growing or are they shrinking? Are they, is there something happening in the market which is influencing their way their business is running? Are there potential points of failure? There's a lot of things to learn about. So create a list of keywords that will help you learn about them. And then you identify and monitor media. So by media, there's a lot of publications online to read and keep in touch with. On LinkedIn, there are many groups which lets you really identify what's being talked about on a daily basis, who even pick out people who are thought leaders and influencers. So identify and monitor these. And this is really the process of listening. In SAP, we use a tool a lot called LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which allows us to do this in a very simplified way. And then from a broad-based metric standpoint, we use things like Sprinkler, which give you dashboards and really help us understand sentiments, social sentiments of around each keyword or theme, if you will. Yeah. All right, and the last piece is sharing and engaging. Yeah, like if you remember, we had discussed why do sharing and engaging? Because it helps you build up that trusted, ongoing relationship with each customer. And then if you need to go and ask them for a favor or a question or something, they can bank on the equity of that relationship that's been built up over time, right? And sharing and engaging is how you, just like you water a plant in the morning, you have to fuel your relationships like that. Otherwise, they go away, right? All right, so there are 3 levels of sharing and engaging. There's beginner, medium, intermediate, and expert level. We'll talk about each of these in turn, right? So the beginner is very, very simple. Of course, we all do this. We've all been doing this for a while, liking, commenting, favoriting something, retweeting something. The buttons would be right there below every post. Now, the thing to remember here is that when you're retweeting something, it is always better to add your own capture, like a summary or some line when you're retweeting it, so you can add that value on top, right? Retweeting without comments means that sometimes if I see that somebody on my network has retweeted something without comment, I often wonder if they've even read the material, right? Or are they just doing it because everybody else is doing it? Similarly, when you comment on someone's post, rather than just saying, hey, great one, or good article, or thank you, if you can add something of a little more value, that is your opportunity to make sure your brand and your credibility is being reinforced once again. So for example, when I read an article, I might pull out one comment from it. And when I comment on this person's post, I'll say that, hey, that one line I really liked, so-and-so, quoting you. Or I'll ask a question. Your inputs on so-and-so were great. Could you help me understand how this would apply to a different situation like this? Right? So something of a slightly more value, which may keep a conversation going, but I would not lose that opportunity to reinforce my own brand in that situation. Right? This is what it says about retweeting with comment. Now, best practices for commenting. This is very simple. Always add value. You can ask a question. You can always make it personal to the original poster by tagging their name, or you can actually enable another part of your network to see that post by tagging them. Yeah, make your comment relevant to the topic of the post. It's quite strange actually that a lot of people comment and it's got nothing to do with the post, which makes one wonder, okay, what exactly are you trying to say here, because it's not relevant. And then ensure that you follow your company's social media guidelines. So every large company or even medium-sized companies these days have social media guidelines, what you can and cannot post, what is offensive, what is not. So ensure that is being followed. And then under don'ts, like I mentioned, don't just say thanks for posting or hey, good article. It doesn't really add that much more value. And the second point, which is actually the most important thing on this entire slide, do not engage in conflict. Because please remember that not just yourself, you are also representing your company's brand. And no matter how many people troll you online, just do not engage. This happens to me because I write a lot of content, and there are always going to be people who take offense at something or the other, and they'll write very provocative things. Just do not engage. Be graceful. So you can say thank you, or you can just ignore it, but ideally, never ever engage in conflict on a social media platform because you're representing your company's brand along with your own. Yeah. Okay, so that was the beginner level of sharing and engaging. The intermediate level is slightly more, where you are finding third-party content, reading it, then you feel that, hey, this might be interesting to my network, and you share online. So this is usually, I would do this on LinkedIn and Twitter, right? So it could be business advice, or it could be solutions to a problem, or a quote, or an opinion. And there are wide variety. So I like to read Fast Company a lot. I like to read Seth Godin's blog, for example. That's a very nice marketing blog. But there are also newspapers, publications, there are a wide variety of things available. HBR, for example, Harvard Business Review is a very nice one. Now here, a rule of thumb is given here as you should at least share once a day with a certain structure that's given here, 1 to 2 sentences. But I would suggest from my experience that what's more important is the value that you're adding. So if that means that you're not able to do it once a day, you only do it 3 times a week, that's absolutely fine. What's more important is that you've read it, you found something of value, and you've posted that comment or tweet with a one-liner from you that's genuine, authentic, and which is something you found valuable, and therefore your network should read it. That value is a lot more important than the frequency. Frequency comes second. Okay, so then sharing in groups, you could enter a discussion topic if you're passionate about the topic and talk about it, add some insights, and so on and so forth. This last point here about 90-10 is a very important one again. So what this says is that out of all the content that you share on your professional networks like LinkedIn or Twitter, 90% should be non-promotional in nature, and only 10% can be promotional content. So for example, if I'm an employee of SAP, only 10% of the time should I post about SAP products, solutions, events, webinars, or anything that SAP does. The remaining 90% of the time, I should be posting about thought leadership, what's happening in the market, that's influencing our business or somebody else's business, and so forth. That ensures that your network won't take what you post as spam, right? It's very important to be very aware of what's delivering value and stay on that side of that line. All right, the third level of sharing is advanced level, where you're actually composing original content and posting that, right? So this can be in one of 2 or 3 different ways. One is you're writing blogs or articles, or you can, there's a lot of video tools these days and a lot of video blogging going on. So in SAP, we use a wide variety of tools for this, which I won't go through right now. But yeah, so composing original content, be very clear, again, of that target market or target audience that you have in mind. What is really of interest to them? What is relevant to their business? What would they feel compelled to come and learn from you? And of course, make it entertaining. Put a few jokes in there. Put yourself and your authentic self into your material, right? That's important. 90-10 rule, we talked about it. Make sure that no more than 10% of posts contain promotional content that is about your business or your company. The rest 90% should be about the industry, news, trends, interesting articles, humanizing posts, or anything else that your network will find interesting, non-spammy and non-pushy in terms of a sales process. right? So the idea always with a social network is to add value first and foremost. That's the only way it will work from a selling mechanism standpoint in the long term. Of course, we know this, the impact of visuals. Visuals get 120% more engagement. This really works compared to more text form of posts, right? So this is a couple of last thoughts over here from my end. Like they say, social is not a place for the hard sell. It's a place to build trust and credibility. It's a place to build long-term relationships that you can take to fruition over a period of time. Just like you water plants and nurture plants, your relationships on social, especially with customers and thought leaders and influencers, these are relationships that you need to keep watering and need to keep adding fuel from time to time to time. Only then will this demand generation, lead generation, social selling, all of this work for you. So it's not a overnight success thing. It's something that you have to continually invest in across time. And the last bit here, social media does create a kinship between customers and companies. And that kinship between your company and your customer eventually equals purchase intent. But it is up to you to do that conversion, to walk that path, to put in that investment, put in that time, put in that effort. Yeah, so I will end here. Thank you very much for listening to me. And Ankita, are there any questions at this time?
Thank you, Paroma, for this wonderful presentation. So here is the first question to you by Abhinav, who's asking, can you talk about how to do demand generation for a brand new B2B product within a big company which offers B2B products? The talk so far has focused too much on personal branding rather than branding the product/offering.
Okay. Sure. Thanks, Abhinav, for that question. So yes, we have been talking about B2B companies and how B2B selling can happen in a digital way, specifically with a focus on social selling. Now, the importance of personal branding in this situation is there because your customer is probably a CIO or a CTO in a large organization and has many requests coming to them on a day-to-day basis. Unless they perceive you to be someone that will add value, they will never respond to you. So the branding piece, yes, we've covered more of that, but also because it is extremely important, extremely important. I cannot emphasize enough. How would you demand or generate demand beyond that point? Once you have figured out and your brand, your personal brand is strong, your personal brand, like we saw on several of the LinkedIn profiles, also integrates what your company does, what is the value your company brings, what is the product portfolio you're working on, and how it integrates with who you are as a person. So when you reach out, socially share and engage with your customer over time, through your shares, they will understand who you are, what is it you do, which products do you represent, what is the new thing you bring to market, and how will that add value to his content, right? Like we discussed, it's an ongoing journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But that is a process to go through. You build your brand, you find that customer, you do the prospecting, you understand what's top of mind for him, and then you share and engage over a period of time to build a relationship. Then you can ask for a call or a meeting, bring that relationship on a face-to-face basis. That's it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, indeed, I guess. Yeah, Paroma, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ankita. Please go on.
Yeah. The next question is, what is the difference between lead and demand generation?
That's a great question. So demand, like we didn't quite demarcate those two. Demand is, like we discussed, right? Demand is something that's latent in the market. It is when we look at customer pain points and try to convert it into an articulated value proposition that we can address through our own offerings, through our company offerings. Leads is when, so demand is a broader concept. Demand generation is more at a conceptual level. Leads is when we talk about demand individual companies and their specific needs. So for example, tomorrow, for example, I do my social selling. I'll reach out to 5 people, 5 CFOs, for example, from 5 different companies. That would be 5 leads for me. Yeah. So demand generation is more of a conceptual. It's a concept that we use from a quarterly or an annual standpoint when we're doing planning. That okay, I'm going to generate say 30 million of demand this year from my market, and I'm just pulling numbers out of a hat. Leads are that will mean I need to talk to 200 companies. So there will be 200 leads, right? So this, I hope that helps. I'll get that back to you.
Okay, the next question is by Shreyas. The question is, does video content work on LinkedIn? Are there some scenarios under which video will work better than other forms of content?
That's an excellent question. And yes, the data I've seen and the examples that we come across, because I am a gold level social selling trainer and I've done social selling across the world, we see more and more stories coming from people who have used video to to achieve achieve targets that they have not been able to achieve with other kinds of content, right? So, for example, when I've seen sales executives who go to events and do a live share of a piece of an event, or sometimes they will do a video version of their business card, right? Or they will do a holiday greeting in the form of a video, or they will even do a small product pitch, 2 minutes on video. So what ends up happening is that people today are a lot more attention compressed than they ever have been before. And rather than take 5 to 7 minutes reading through an entire article, a lot of people prefer to spend 1.5 to 2 minutes watching a video. And they feel it's more engaging and it's more interactive. Yes, video does have a lot more power in a lot of ways. It does cut across different generations of people as well. Like millennials, for example, engage a lot more on video, and they are great at creating videos and they are great at watching and consuming videos. So yes, going forward, we're going to see more and more video happening for demand generation. Yes, it's working very well already.
All right. Yeah. The next question is tips to advertise a SaaS product on FB, Facebook.
That's very interesting. So my experience, I've used Facebook more in a B2C sales context because I've just in my experience that's worked better. In a B2B context, I've used Facebook when we've done live events for live event coverage. Facebook offers a pretty nice video platform. But I mean, I would say ultimately it comes down to the marketing 101. Who is your audience? What are their demographics? What is their geography? What are they looking? What are their interests? And pick out your Facebook strategy in that way. But I would also say monitor very closely how much return on investment you're getting, because ultimately, in 1 month, if you see that it's been negative, it may not turn around later on. So that's because I'm just saying that from my personal experience with Facebook and B2B. I feel it works a lot more cleaner and better with B2B.
All right. The next question is, what is the importance of creating own content for a company which is into CRM services or solutions?
Okay, so what is the importance of creating your own content? Well, I think where we are in 2018 today, right? It's digital has seen, I don't know, over 15 years of exposure to our market. Every company out there is building content because ultimately, at the end of the day, people still say content is king. Now, that works in two different ways, right? Now, supposing I look at a company which has a huge central team of marketing and content, and they're working on kick-ass content every day, delivering me exactly what I need. then I'm happy to just share that. Maybe that's all I need to do. But maybe sometimes you're in a market unit that's different from where the central team is located, and they don't quite understand the nuances of your specific part of the market. So this happens sometimes with my team in India here, where we face very specific situations like GST happened, demonetization happened. We want to create content that's very, very relevant to what's happening in the market today. And at that time, you might just need to step in and do that work yourself if nobody else is doing it. So whether it's for a CRM company or whether for any other solution that touches an end consumer or an end customer, it's important to have content that is relevant to what's happening, what's top of their mind that day or that moment in time. If it means that you need to step up and do that content yourself, then yes, you have to. But that's your call to make.
All right. The next question is, how should a B2B product startup develop leads?
A B2B product startup. So because you said startup, I would imagine marketing funds would be lower than what you would have if you were more established or if you had a Series C funds and so forth. I would definitely recommend more digital than anything else. But again, I'm going to repeat this ad nauseum because this is marketing 101. Find your target audience, figure out where their eyeballs are, and put your message where their eyeballs already go. You cannot change behavior or consumer or customer behavior as it comes to the kind of media they choose to consume. You can only put your message where they already are. So understand your audience thoroughly in and out, and then use the right techniques to get to them. I suggest digital because it gives the highest ROI and it's very, very, very measurable. Almost every dollar or rupee that you spend, you can figure out whether it works for you, against you, or somewhere in the middle. You can adjust your spend and your media planning very, very fine-tuned to what the needs of the market are. That's my guidance.
All right. Daniel has a question for you. We are a product-based company. We are well known in US location. Now we are trying to reach globally. So what do you think to reach out globally?
Reaching out globally is more of an ambition than a strategy statement in my mind. Yes, reaching out globally, one would like to have a global presence, but the strategy needs to be further defined before I can express the way. For example, you might say that I am successful in the US, and in order to go global, I want to first go after these markets, which includes Germany, which includes China, which includes Brazil, for example. Again, I'm picking out three random markets. And then your how do you do that? It's based upon the specifics of those markets. Because buying patterns, consumption patterns are very different from a market to market basis. Your selection of where you want to go to become global is the first decision you have to make. Following that, you have to figure out how much marketing investments you're going to make, which channels you're going to use, what are the trends in those markets, what's happening there, and then your media plan comes in. Right? The first decision to make is, in order to be global, if I have to be global 3 years down the line, what does that mean? Which countries do I must have a presence in?
All right. The next question is, for marketing promotion, should we promote our individuality or company profile or product in that 10% promotional budget?
In that 10%, when we talk about promotional content being 10%, that promotional content is talking about your company's products, your company's events, your company's webinars, things like that. It's not talking about you personally. Promotional content means, again, from the context of B2B demand generation, if you're a salesperson who wants to develop leads, build demand, your promotional content is the products that your company sells. So only 10% of your posts or less should be about what your company is selling.
Okay. What's the future of cold calling, and can you please touch upon the hygiene of drip campaigns?
Right. So, future of cold calling. I think cold calling is already dying a death. It's like that, the poor guy who wanders into the middle of the desert and finds no water, and after 5 days is completely dead. I think that's the future of cold calling. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but to be honest, whenever I get a spam call from someone, it disturbs my day, it disturbs my meeting. I often forget what I was doing, and I don't know. How I will react to that person is completely unpredictable. And so also put yourself in your customer's shoes, who's probably getting lots of pings and different things from all kinds of digital, social media, phone ringing, people asking him. So yeah, cold cold calling is, I think, dying a death because there is no reason to cold call anymore, especially with digital being there and there being the likelihood of building up a relationship, a value-added relationship over time. There is no need for cold calling in the future anymore. So I think it's dying. Second piece was about, I'm sorry, I missed it. Drip advertising or drip marketing?
Drip
And I have to get, I have no idea what that is, so I'm sorry.
All right. Okay. The next question is, what is the percentage of leads converting into win through social listening?
Sorry, leads converting into, sorry, what?
Into leads converting into sales, I suppose, through social listening into win. I think what Avinash is meaning through win is like us, we are cracking a sale from
Yes,
prospect
I
to a
get it.
sale.
So what is a conversion from a prospect to a sale by using social selling techniques? Is that the question?
So social listening.
So social listening is just the process of research you would do, and it is one of the steps to a social selling process. By listening alone, you will not convert anybody from a current state to a future desired state of a sale. Right? You have to go through that journey of branding, followed by listening and prospecting, followed by sharing and engaging, and then you can think about converting a prospect to a sale. Now, to answer the question, what percentage of leads typically or prospects typically convert to a sale using social selling techniques? The answer is the answer is that it depends on your industry, on your company, on your investments, on the time you've spent, on everything. So please remember, social selling is still very, very new. In India, again, it also differs a lot by geography. For example, in the US, where there are a lot more people online and by investing, I mean investing the time in LinkedIn every day, my digital campaigns have a lot more eyeballs that see my campaign. In India, especially in public sector, government side, for example, there are very few people that are online or invest in their brand online. So I don't see a similar kind of success in India in that particular sector. Other sectors will see more conversions and more engagement. So again, it depends on the sector, on the geography, on the kind of solutions. There's many dependent.
All right. How efficiently can we use hashtags in social selling?
Yeah, so hashtags are very important and interesting to use as well. They are, of course, more more used on Twitter than on any other channel, but now they're picking up on others as well. So when, excuse me, remember that a hashtag word is a word that's searchable. So what you want to do is you want to write write your if you're retweeting or tweeting a piece of content. Um, the bad thing to do is hashtag stuffing, where every alternate word is a hashtag. Then your entire post loses its meaning. So it's much easier to write it out in plain English, and then the topics that you would want for other people to search to get to your post. those are the 2 or 3 words that you would make in hashtag. For example, I write this whole post about some customer success we've had in the field of agriculture or something, and then I might add a hashtag big data or hashtag IoT and leave it at that. More than 2 or 3 hashtags in one post is too much, and it impedes the readability of it, and it makes it very annoying. So yes, hashtags are important, but correct use of hashtags is even more important than just having hashtags for the sake of it.
All right. For the corporate blog of a B2B company, what is the ideal frequency of posting articles?
Corporate blog of a company. I think depends on how many writers you have, but typically I've seen each writer write at least 1 or 2 blogs a week. But again, it depends on the size of the company. So for example, we have a pretty broad portfolio, and there are a lot of people writing. But ideally the page should see a few pieces of content every week for it to remain fresh in the eyes of the readers.
Okay. This other question is, we are a digital marketing company. Through social media, leads are generated as much as we have expected. What approach we need to use to achieve the target audience through social media?
Could you repeat that once? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. We are a digital marketing company. Through social media, leads are generated as much as we have expected. What approach we need to use to achieve the target audience through social media?
All right. So I suggest if you could reach out to me offline. I mean, there is some amount of diagnosis that needs to go into what is working and not working for you. So if you're saying that your social media is yielding what is expected, then you should be happy with the outcome. If you're not happy with the outcome, that means that there's some investments you're making that you're not happy with the results. You have to look at your media plan and see where you're investing, how much you're investing, what is the expectation, and how perhaps you could change that media mix or channel mix in a way that gives you better results. So, sorry, the answer to this cannot be black and white because the same approach, it's not a one size fits all approach. It has to be, it depends on the business, it depends on what investments you're making currently.
All right, rightly said. What do you think about digital marketing on text platforms like native text apps or WhatsApp?
I'm sorry, say that again. I missed the first part.
What do you think about digital marketing on text platforms like native text apps or WhatsApp?
Um, so again, WhatsApp is kind of a community building app, right? So it's a personal text platform. It is a little bit of smaller group formation. I have not seen WhatsApp work very well from an advertising perspective. I'm aware there are groups of customers who come together. For example, there are many CFO groups, CIO groups, and so on. And these are walled communities, so vendors and sellers are not allowed on there. Every time someone adds me to a group where there is some form of selling involved, I would log out immediately, and I've seen most people react similarly. So there is a very strong boundary there where people who expect a certain level of personal connectivity on a platform, they're not willing to extend it to a professional selling kind of a thing. Now that's why we come back to social networks and the importance of LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, as you know, is a professional network. People are a little more open to being approached on a professional context there, even if there is selling involved. That is the power of that platform, and that is why we should use it to the best of our ability rather than go to a platform like WhatsApp or other text-based apps where people are resistant and will probably not react to your solutions as well as they would on a platform like LinkedIn.
All right, I guess this would be the last question, keeping the time in mind, which is the effective social media platform to run ad campaigns.
That again depends on your product. For example, when I was back doing fashion e-commerce, Facebook worked really well, Instagram worked really well, Pinterest worked really well. When I'm in SAP doing B2B marketing and sales, none of these would work that well. LinkedIn and Twitter would work much better. So it depends on what you're selling and to whom you're selling to make the right choice of social media from an advertising perspective.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Paroma, for this wonderful presentation and the insights you gave us on the topic. It was really indeed an enriching experience to all of us. I'm sure the audience, their takeaways, they've, learned something new. And I want to also inform all of you that the last episode of our product management series will be on 13th of December, and the topic will be pricing products / profitability. So stay tuned for more details. And Paroma, thank you so much for your time and your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankita. Thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful presenting to you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, all of you. Bye. Take care.